So look who's here. It only took how many days, Andre? We counted.
8.
No.
Yeah, it was 8.
11.
Yeah.
Well, no.
It was 8, because you said 8.
No, they had it on 8.
It was Thursday. That's 11 with the, yeah, it was 8.
Yes.
Monday was the 11th. 11 days. Thursday was 8 days. Didn't take long, did it? No. Okay, so here we go. Turn this down for a minute. We don't want it to overflow. What we got going on here, hold on a minute. So anyway, I'm poking around in my room. Is this recording? Yeah. Poking around in my room, checking the jars, right? Anyway, you see what I'm doing here? That's 4 jars that popped from that water bath. When I did that water bath with the pork and the turkey. I'm not sure what this is. The lids are in there. Anyway, anytime. It doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter if it's beans. Where am I? Is this something? What's going on? It doesn't matter if it's beans. Low acid food, right? Beans, any kind of vegetables, any kind of meat. I guess fish. If you do canning, put it in food storage, and it pops. Go play. Nana's busy. Go play. I'm having to do something here. It's stinky. So anyway, if your jar pops, before you dispose of it, okay, you're supposed to boil it. Boil the food in a separate pot. Start your water. Talked about this before. Get it boiling. Put the food in there. Continue to boil. Okay? Boil it for 10 minutes. And in another pot, water. And boil your jars for 10 minutes. And the lid, right? Before you wash them. Then this way, if there's any botulism on it, for any reason, you've killed it. Before you throw it in the garbage, as well as before you start washing your jars in the sink. Okay? That is best practices. So, now, I had these in my room, to which normally is very cool, but, you know, I've been baking up here for months, upstairs, like seriously. My son took down that air conditioner. It just wasn't working. And I lent him my little air purifier. Because he put dementous earth all over the floor. Just to, you know, because fleas every now and then in the basement, just like that floor. It's been like that ever since I moved in. Don't have fleas upstairs. I don't have that problem, but every now and then, over the years, there's been fleas down there. I think it's because it's cooler, and it's just, you know, it's the basement. And, I don't know. Anyway, I lent him that because it got dusty down there. So far, I found 4 jars that unsealed themselves. Was it because it's so warm in my room? I don't know. It's hard to say. I got other things in there that were pressure canned. I have to get up underneath my bed and check those jars. But underneath my bed is cooler. So, it's hard to say. But, you know, I think the only time I would ever water bath a low acid food for the 3-hour boil with the lid on in terms of a water bath would be like if the hydro went out or something, and you know, I was forced to cook outside and preserve food that was maybe in my freezer that was unthawing, and it was just a quick fix method kind of thing, because I don't know if I'd want to use a pressure canner outside. I think it would be kind of hard to control the temperature on it, honestly. Yeah. And for a situation like that, then yeah, I would probably do it. But outside of that, no. I think I'm just going to use pressure canner all the time when it comes to meats and vegetables and that type of stuff. Like I said, I wanted to try it. Now, I still have jars in there that haven't popped, and it would still be the same principle. Even if you pressure canned it, open your jar, put it in a pot, bring it to a boil, put the lid on, lower the heat, keep it on a low boil for 10 minutes. Just in the event of there might be botulism with or without a pressure canner. So the same principle applies. Right, this isn't really much different outside of it's kind of important to do this step, even though it's kind of it is spoiled, right? Just to not potentially contaminate the environment once it goes into the garbage can, and then wherever it goes, right? So I'm just saying. Okay, so I'm wagged here. It's the next day. The kids had a little sleepover. Anyway, so we're just going to do a little food video thing here, right? In terms of Andre, he gets loud on that Nintendo. Hold on a minute. Okay. Anyway, just kind of following up on food prep in terms of general information. So, I opened up one of these jars. Right? So it doesn't bend the lid. And the first thing that I found inside was, with these jars, instead of vacuum sealing, I used an oxygen absorber. To which 12 jars, only 2 jars popped. So I'm assuming the other 10 jars have these inside. So they do work. Okay, that's the first thing. But they're not guaranteed. Okay? Either or. So I opened up the jar and I tasted it. Seems to me it's millet. Because when I took my jars down, I had little pieces of paper on the box telling you what it was. Because I don't necessarily label each and every jar when I was doing stuff like this. And of course the labels went missing. So it's not like I can see. Never mind. Anyway, we know it's millet. So I need these jars for those peaches. Right? And now put them in there. Right? And this is where I should have Andre just take a boo on them. Now this is a jar that's never been canned with seal, like a lid. It's never been canned with. So it should be okay for canning. So as I gather up these lids, I'll put them in a separate bag. And I'll put them second use, dry use, second use. Whether I use them for the freezer or whether I use them for canning. I wouldn't necessarily use them for meat because they've already been... But for like peaches or something like that, probably it'd be okay. I don't know. Either or, they've never been pressure canned. And from what I can see, they've held their shape. Right? Ideally, you want this kind of a can opener to pop these things. Because... you don't want to alter their shape, and I'm finding that this works pretty good as long as you're gentle. these oxygen absorbers did a pretty good seal. You heard it. So oxygen absorbers do work. Okay. Didn't damage the lid from what I can see. I can feel a little bit of something here underneath, right? So, you know, in a situation like this, I'd only use them if I absolutely had to, because I sometimes use these kind of things for freezing. Right. Okay, Andre, will you come here for a minute? Yeah.
I'm putting the cans away, okay?
Yeah, you can do that, but also you have to do the laundry. I mean, the litter box.
Yeah, I'll do that later.
Oh, here's another oxygen absorber. Okay. I need you to look in here.
Ow!
Everything looking good?
Move, please. They're calling my neck.
Now, in terms of water bathing meat, like I said, if the hydro went out and it was going to be out for weeks and my freezer was unthawing and I was in panic mode, come here.
Sorry.
Come here.
What's that? Yeah, this one's a couch ham.
Do you see it? Does it look good? Nice and clean?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
Okay.
So let me see after I would just let me go.
Sure, you do that. Okay. So, for sure, I'd water bath the way I was water bathing a low acid food. In this case, it was meat, because it would be more easier to control a burning fire with wood, with a boiling water, with a lid, compared to in a pressure canner. Okay, because you know it can rise fast.
What am I looking for?
Mold.
What does the mold look like on these?
Well, you'd see dark stuff and just whatever. No, there's no mold in it because it was a dry good with an oxygen absorber, but you know,
Yeah, it has a good smell.
it has a good smell. Okay, and it tastes good. You just have to double check these things before you go to the next whatever, right? You know, I can't see. Technically, I should have you here helping me look at these jars before I pull them in.
That's good.
But either or. I'd smell it. I'm very good at smelling mold, so I'll smell it.
I have never smelled mold
If this is all dry goods, right? The point of the oxygen absorber is just to bring it to a dormant state so that mold can't grow. Okay, so in terms of the 4 jars that popped with that water bath meat, and right, you've seen I boiled the meat in a separate pot. I boiled the jars in a separate pot, right? You know, washed the jars, hot soapy water, and then took out the meat, put it in the bag. It's in the garbage, and then I took the boiled water and I just threw it into the compost because it was greasy and I didn't want it to go down my drain. Okay, so either or, that's done. Now, I'm thinking, why did those jars pop? Because they all haven't popped yet. Okay, I do believe in the method, in terms of I do believe that you can do that for 3 to 4 hours with that rolling boil, you know, that rolling boiling water with the lid on, right, to seal your jars. I do believe that, you know, it's time tested in terms of generations of families have been doing it and can still continue to do it. There's people in other countries that have no choice but to do it because they don't have access to pressure canners, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, okay, well, what did you do wrong if you had to do anything wrong? And if I remember correctly, I'm going to have to go find those videos, right? I was adding the extra fat, which is okay, but I think I remember correctly, I was going too high up on the headspace. If I would have left more maybe headspace so that grease couldn't have crawled, I probably would have been more successful because grease crawls, right? The second thing is, yes, during the fall and the winter and early part of spring, my room is very, very, very cool. However, this time of year, it's not as cool as I would like it to be for that type of product in terms of the meat product.
Wait, I need this.
And other jars that I have, what do you want? Other jars that I have that have like beef in them, chicken or whatever, were all pressure canned, and they're kind of tucked away closer to the floor, you know, or if not on the floor in a box under the bed frame, or on a shelf that I have. You've seen that one, lower, whatever. And you know, very seldom, very, very seldom do I get a jar that pops. But every now and then you get the one jar that pops, you know, and if it sits there for any length of time, you're going to see it inside the jar looking spoiled, right? In this situation, I went and I tapped them. Maybe I'll take you into my bedroom and I'll tap these lids so that you can hear. And I tapped them, and of course, you know, you get a different sounds, and I'm like, that doesn't sound right, something, and I can kind of smell something, right? And I'm like, okay. So, yeah, and I managed to pick up 4 jars that had popped, okay? And were starting to spoil on the inside, okay? And in that situation, you want to boil the food for 10 minutes and the jars separately before you dispose of the food and wash the jars in the event that there's botulism. But be aware, you can use a pressure canner, do everything right, put your food away in a nice cool dark spot, and it can still have botulism in it without you realizing, even though it looks good, smells good, tastes good. And that's why it's recommended that you boil for 10 minutes before you consume it. Either or, you're boiling for 10 minutes, either to throw it out or to consume it if it's a low acid food. So with that said, if I had to take a pressure canner and a water bath for meat, we'll just use meat as the example, I don't necessarily feel insecure with the water bath method outside of I could have lowered the fat level, given it more headspace, right? And put the jars in a more colder space where, like in Auntie Shamay's room, lower to the north wall, closer to the floor, or wherever, you know, if the temperature is colder down in her room than it is in my room at this time of year. So it's really important that you find a very cool, dark place for them. Okay? I can't say that pressure canning did a better seal yet, people, because I was putting in too much fat and I was getting too high up on that headspace. But I said to heck with it, right? So now we know, okay? So I'm not going to say no on water bath. And as a matter of fact, at some point here, and you know, within this video or maybe the next video, I'll bring out one of those jars that I did a water bath on that are still sealed, and I will cook it up and I will eat it, and you will see that it will be fine. Okay? Because millions of people have already done it. The reason that they brought in the pressure canner in part was because it produced a level of convenience for the modern day woman that was living a middle class lifestyle and could afford to buy these quote unquote new appliances. Okay, there was a boom of kitchen appliances that came in to, you know, make money, right? And supposedly to make people's lives better. Either or, and then of course it became regulated, right? But still, at the end of the day, you know, the large majority of the population across the world don't have access to pressure canners, and they do boil their food for 3 to 4 hours with the lid on in a water bath method to preserve it. And they do use a bit of extra fat on top, but then I'm looking and I'm thinking, well, they probably give it more of a headspace, because if the temperature in the air changes, if you've got 8 months out of the year where it's cool, the grease is going to stay solidified and it's not going to crawl. But if you've got 4 months out of that 12 months where it's like hot and muggy, and you know, it's definitely a big difference, and the grease starts to melt, and grease likes to crawl. Okay? And if there's not enough, well, it's going to crawl no matter what the headspace is. But anyway, so just wanted to, clarify that, because I haven't been doing any food videos and talking about this stuff. Oftentimes we see people on YouTube, they go through the method, they say, oh yeah, we can do this and we can do that, but they don't really come back with the follow-up. I think sometimes because they're embarrassed to say, well, gee, I had 4 jars that popped on me out of 12. Well, no, out of 24. Out of 24 jars, 4 jars so far have popped. Okay? Yeah, but then you have to ask yourself, why did they pop? I already gave you the reasons. The room got too warm in the last 3 months of whatever heat dome that we're going into. And I don't necessarily have them stored in the coolest part of the house where that should have been the priority if I was going to do meat, because of the grease that can crawl. Can I cut back on the grease the next time I do this? Yeah, by all means, I probably will, because I'm not done with my quote-unquote experiment, right? Right? Because if the hydro goes out, I'm going to do it in terms of the water bath with meat that's in my freezer. And, everybody's going to be in panic mode. Oh, the meat is spoiling. The meat is spoiling. I'll be like, don't worry. This is how we tackle this problem. Go find the jars, okay? And you're good to go. Just saying. To do it again, in terms of when I want to buy my beef, which I think I better buy very soon. I went to the grocery store the other day, after the social workers left, right? And, I don't get drunk. I don't go off and do stupid shit. You know what I'm saying? My venting is go to the grocery store and buy groceries. So Andre and I and Mari went there. I don't know how Marina downstairs thought I was down there for 6 hours in the grocery store. I wasn't in the grocery store for 6 hours, but probably about 2 or 3 hours for sure, pushing 3 hours. And I went through aisle to aisle with Andre, and I'm not rushing, because if Marcaine takes me, he rushes me. If Tisha takes me, she rushes me. Even Andre will rush me sometimes, and I'm like, no, because if you're going to rush me, I'm just going to leave everything behind. I'm not buying nothing. And whereas if you just go with the flow, I talk about, the different weights and in comparison to the dollar amount, and trying to figure out the best deal and blah 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 blah. And we went from aisle to aisle to aisle, and anyway, we get to the meat aisle, and I'm telling you, people, they hardly had any meat. They only had like 4 or 5 packs of beef of something, which I bought, and very little chicken. I mean, they had a little bit more pork. I'm noticing these grocery stores tend to have a bit more pork, but when it comes to beef, and I'm like, okay, you need to do your $500 shop. So I go up and I do my $500, $600, $700 shop of beef. In a situation like that, I wouldn't experiment. I would do it in my pressure canner. But I would also go out of my way to put it downstairs where it's much, much more cooler without it warming up for that short period of time out of a year where, anywhere from 2 to 4 months, the temperature, is warm. Like, I wouldn't mind even putting a fan in my room just to cool it down. And I'm thinking, Judy, you've had it like this for years. Don't get all anal about it. Just don't worry. Just do the video and let people know, right? Right. In terms of, just education, right? Because, you see people do the water bath, but they don't do the follow-up on it. They don't tell you what to do if you come across a jar that's popped. It's imperative that you boil it in boiling water. You start your water first, get it boiling, empty your contents in, and then put the jar and the lid into another boiling pot of water, and you boil everything for 10 minutes, let it cool down, scoop up your fucking whatever you was boiling, put it in a bag, tie it up, throw it in the garbage. This way you know that you're not contaminating the landfill with botulism. Okay? And if it's still good, the eagles and the seagulls and all those kind of things that fly around in those kind of places will eat it. If they don't want it, they won't eat it. Chances are they'll probably eat it. Yeah. There's only one jar smelled. Yeah, the other ones popped, but they hadn't been popped for very long. So they didn't smell bad, right? Which tells you that, you know, where the other one was starting to smell kind of like spoiled meat because it popped sooner. But then it's been like, we've been baking up here for 3 months. Literally going into 3 months baking. But my son took down that air conditioner because it doesn't work. So, I'm tired, but I'm trying to keep a steady pace. Right, so when they pop, if it's a dry good, don't worry about it. Okay? I mean, obviously, it would be great if I could see in terms of, is there mold in there? But the chance of there being mold in there is nil to none because it came in dry. It's millet. That's what it is. So I'm going to start using. These work. 2 jars out of a case. That's not too bad. Smell it. Taste it. If there was any kind of mold growth, you'd smell it and you would taste it. There is none. So, and it does. It smells good. Hold on a minute. Okay, so we know YouTube doesn't appreciate me, but my friends do. So in the meantime, doesn't that just look lovely? So I don't know how many jars that was. That's a 2-gallon bucket. These little buckets are great. Okay. So I think I already got some millet in my bedroom. So this one I'm going to put millet on it and going to go downstairs. Because, you know, it's cooler, right? So a 2-gallon bucket takes 7 quart-sized jars to fill up with millet. That's not so bad. And then these ones, I think maybe what I might do is leave them like this because they're already sealed. And I'm going to start cooking with this stuff, right? So I'm going to label these millet on the here, and I may or may not put them in my room, and I'm going to start using them like cooking with the kids, for the kids, right? With Andre or whatever. Okay? And then as these are empty and whatever I've got going on in my bedroom, then, you know, of course we know I got more downstairs, people, because, you know, I've been doing food prep for how many years? Right? When the social workers came to do their little walk through the path, I said, you see that box there? I put it there just for you. I'm just saying. What am I supposed to say? I need those jars. At least some of those jars, right? Because, you know, I got those pizzas I have to do, right? Yeah. And as for Amari, his little appetite seems to be getting a little better after this seizure. You know, I pointed that out to these doctors that, you know, after he has a seizure, it's like something releases in his brain. And, you know, he might end up using, one time he ended up using his right hand and his left at the same time. And both Teach and I, we noticed it, right? And we couldn't believe that he was doing it, but at some point that went away. Okay, because, you know, this gets tighter and tighter. And okay, so anyway, see these? I got 2 of them. I guess this one will be for carrots. So I'm going to boil up some carrots today. I'm going to puree them for the most part. And so half of carrots. I'll put half carrots, half of something else. Maybe cook up some yam, sweet potato, that type of thing. Maybe just some potatoes. Get them prepped, right? In terms of get them, you know, prepped. Half and half. And then that will be kind of like a base to work with for a few days in terms of Murray's cookbook. Okay. You're probably wondering what happened. Not that it's any of your business, but it's like that loose screw on the rail out here, people. Like, I don't know how many years ago that was. I would have to go back into my videos, and social worker called me up. Oh, got it. Whatever. We need to come by and check your porch. I said, check my porch. Why? Oh well, there's a loose screw. It's making the porch rail dangerous. That's what are you supposed to say? So they came. They did the little spot check with Andre. Whatever. I think there was only 2 people that would have done that at that time. Well, maybe 3. My French neighbors that used to spy on us and were just so high and mighty and whatever. The guy used to literally put a camera in towards the bedroom where Shamay was, right when she was in that room, and she pointed that out to me, and like to listen and all this crap, right? So, maybe he heard me out there talking about this loose screw on the rail, and I think I did a video on it, made mention of it in a video, so it could have been, somebody sitting up God knows where watching my video and then called MCFD, because back in those days, I talked to these social workers, right, and they'd be like, how many calls we get from you because of YouTube? Basically. So, there's a fine line in there, right? Anyway, or it was Sierra, because Sierra wasn't, recovering the way she wanted to recover. And even though we were, cutting her slack, doing whatever we could do to try and help her, just nothing worked, right? So, of course, she'd rebel and get jealous and get mad, and so maybe she went and said something, and that's what the social workers came with. Well, we're here because somebody was complaining about a loose screw on your rail that was making it dangerous for Andre. Okay. So it's kind of the same situation in terms of the path, right? So the file is getting closed again. Obviously, I'm talking to Tisha. I did get her to apologize to me. She wasn't really gung-ho about it versus justifying it by her behavior by saying we shouldn't be fighting over school. Well, obviously not, especially when you don't make that decision and you've got your own children to think about. Right? And I think the bigger lesson is here, Tisha, is when you put Alea May into school and then eventually Kyrie into school, if you're not happy with the results of their learning or environment or whatever it is, and you feel like you want to bring them home for homeschooling, know that you can. Don't ever think that you can't. Right? And there's tons of stuff here at the house if you want it, if you don't go off and buy it for yourself. I don't want you to ever think that you don't have a choice, Tisha. Because we don't know what's going to happen with Alea May in school yet, or Kyrie. And if one doesn't adapt and there's problems brewing, Tisha knows how to deal with the problem because she's seen her mom deal with the problem. And yeah, people are going to come and criticize you. They're going to scrutinize on you, right? They're going to blame you for this and blame you for that, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, if you're doing it for all the right reasons, okay, in terms of Andre's growing up to be a pretty good kid, right? Going to be a young man soon, like a teenager. And eventually he's going to be a man. And, I think on the path that we're going on with everybody kind of on the same page, I think he'll be responsible, fairly responsible, if not responsible. He'll be attentive. He'll be dependable, if not dependable, in terms of leaning more towards, I don't want to say 100% be there on the spot, but at the end of the day, compared to other kids and what other kids are doing at his age, Andre is well advanced, even though maybe he can't read as well as he'd like, or academics. Just round it off into academics. When the social workers were talking to him, the first thing they noted was he was articulate. He had a fairly high vocabulary where he was speaking it basically clearly, because I ride his ass on it, right? You need to loud and proud and speak clearly, because otherwise you mumble your words together. So that was good, right? And I don't know, people. I was gonna finish up with this mess. I'm so tired. I don't even know. Right? And I went shopping. Yeah, I was in the grocery store on downtime for 3 hours. Spent a lot of money. Racked up my credit card. Got into my overdraft. But I'm not doing bad things. I bought 12 cases of Green Giant corn. 12 cases of 12 cans of Green Giant corn, 12 cans of chickpeas, so that particular liquid inside the chickpea can be used as an egg substitute. Now, mind you, I could go off and try and can my own chickpeas, which really probably would be economical, being that I have jars and chickpeas and all that other crap. But the thing is, it goes back to that, it being a low acid food, and even if I was to pressure can it, because it's a home canning process, I'd still have to warm it up, bring it to that, boil, turn it down into that lower boil, and let it freaking cool for 10 minutes, and then let it completely or let it boil on medium to low boil, right, for the 10 minutes with the lid on. Then turn off the stove, then let it cool, then put it in the fridge before I can even fucking put it into my salad. Where if I open up a can, I can just, right? And then I get the benefit of that, whatever it's called. So I plan on stocking up on a few more cans of chickpeas. I don't ever need to probably buy chickpeas dried for like years, seriously. But once I start getting into experimenting with the Mari super drinks, that will be my base, and that's when I would suspect I'll start going through a lot of freaking dry chickpeas, and with the fiber left behind, that's when we'll get into some cracker making. Because for the amount of things that I bought, in terms of the amount of money that I spent, like, it's out of control. And there was only like 4 pieces of beef outside of something else there that was 2 or 3 pieces, like packages, right? It was nothing. And I'm like, okay, you need to go off and spend $500 to $700 on this beef before the price gets really out of control. And yeah, in that situation I would pressure can, and yeah, in that situation I'd pay attention to the headspace and not add in too much fat. And yeah, in that case I'd turn around and I'd take those jars and I'd put them in a more cooler environment where it's kind of cool for the majority of the year versus only for 8 months out of the year, and then the rest of the time is like you getting into summer, and it stays like that all day, all night, all day, all night, all day, all night, all day, all night. No wonder why jars are popping in there. You work on solving one problem. I got food in the house. And then you create yourself another problem with having to put it away, and it all doesn't get put away in one day, and things get moved around in order to put it away. And even then, you find out that where you put it isn't necessarily the best place for it. But no regrets. Absolutely no regrets. So I guess I'll come back in a little bit.